Hey everyone, welcome back. The latest Deadlock patch is here. It's coming on the 6th of December. We're a few days late, but we're going to get into the biggest changes, map changes, character changes, etc. One of the biggest changes they made so far is Purple Lane. Look how great it looks. They've added some greenery. We've got like these plant things. I don't know if they were there before. I think this thing was always here. And this wall is also now a little bit bigger to help you from, I don't know, whoever comes at you. Still won't protect you from Seven's Ball of Death though. The next change that they've made to the map is probably one of the biggest that I think that's come in with this patch, is that this no longer exists. This hole in the wall that you may have used multiple times to try and escape. With this no longer existing, you're either forced to go back into your lane, back through the tower, or if you can, go back down through the shop that's underground. I think this is going to be a very interesting change to keep an eye on. One of the really good changes they have now implemented is that when you are going into a game, you can obviously choose whether to lane with party or random or fairness or whatever. Choose your voice and text options, but you can now also choose extra competitive mode. What this allows you to do is queue with other people that have selected this mode and in turn have better comms, people that are more competitive, etc. This is a benefit considering they merged the normal queues and the ranked queues into one, so I think this is really positive and I will not play without this unticked. There is a caveat to this though. Obviously it will reduce your queue count, so if you are queuing at silly o'clock, or if you're in a certain rank where there's only a couple of you queuing, i.e. if you're top of the pops, then this will be disabled for certain people at certain times. So if you ever witness that, that will be why. I think that's wise, otherwise you could be sat there for hours trying to play a game. They've made some great changes to the urn. So the urn is now at a fixed hero movement rate of 13. So if you pick it up, you're going to move at a specific speed the whole way, and it cannot be altered categorically. This means that Ivy can no longer just pick it up and yeet across the map with the urn. She will be fixed to a movement speed of 13, so she'll be easier to chase. I also always thought this was the case, but apparently the urn now starts on the left side of the map and then will alternate to the right, and it will constantly do this over time rather than apparently it used to be random. So I guess that's something. We're now moving on to another patch that I think is quite interesting. If you shoot 1 minion, they all fall down. Was it needed? Not really. It feels a lot nicer. I mean, I felt like most of the time I missed the extra minions that ran across. But that's nice, I guess. Up next, we're going to move on to the end game. So this is where you have to shoot the patron down, whatever the patron is, into the weakened state, whatever it is. It looks like a spinning spinning top, honestly. Very weird. Very, very odd. So the changes to the patron that have been made is that when it's in the floating state, it now has 7.5k health instead of 10k. This, I think, is a good change. When it's weakened, it now has 13.5 instead of 18,000 HP, which is also a good change. And they've made some changes to the regen as well. So it regens at 250 health a minute after 20 minutes in the normal state, and when it's weakened, it goes up at 450 a minute starting at 20 minutes as well. So it's a little bit weaker, but it's got some better regen. So I think in the long run that's better. I do think it felt like quite a while to maybe take it down. I feel like once you're at this stage, you kind of just need to crack on with it if everyone's already dead or can't defend, etc. So I think that's some good changes. Now we're getting into the meat of the patch. This is probably one of my favorite patches from the entire list of patch notes that we've got, and I think I suggested when the game originally came out is that there is no passive income. So now what they've put in is that the bottom 2 net worth players on the team get a small amount of souls per second. As you can see, I'm not actually the lowest, so maybe I'm just the second lowest on the team in souls. But over time, you'll get 1 or 2% increase in souls passively. I'm not sure what that 1 or 2% is based on. It may be based on what you have or what your team has, etc. Not sure how it gets delegated either. I think it's 1 or 2% for the lowest 2 people on your team. Maybe it's if you're the lowest, then you get the 2%, and if you're the second lowest, you get the 1%. Either way, I think it's a really good kind of catch-up mechanism for teams that are struggling on souls, or specifically the players, sorry, that are struggling to catch up and remain with the team. So the final patch note that's on the main list, I honestly don't have a clue what it actually means. Maybe it's something I'm not aware of. I will read it out. Added new limiting function for the soul orb duplication abuses during the laning phase. There may have been some kind of dupe that I wasn't aware of, or maybe happens passively. They've mentioned that you shouldn't experience any real difference in normal gameplay, but apparently players can only participate in 4 soul orb share events per trooper wave before being declared a low priority player. A low priority player is not counted for when deciding how many souls to generate. For example, if a player is near 4 troopers from wave 1 when they die, then moves to a different lane that has an allied hero still fighting wave 1 troopers, that player will no longer cause the wave to double the souls generated, as is the case now, as they are considered a low priority player for that wave. So maybe it's something to do with switching lanes, i.e. if you're on green and you go over to yellow where there's 1 player, it splits it differently and kind of makes it more fair rather than allow you to effectively duplicate it. I think it just sounds like perhaps a poor thought when the game was actually made, and they've patched it now to make more sense rather than allow you to unintentionally duplicate soul orbs. So it's a good change, but I don't think anyone will really notice it in game, which is good. There's been a few reverted changes which I find quite interesting. So they put in some additional damage on Guardians to do 25% more damage to troopers and 25 more damage taken from troopers and players. So that's been reverted, so less damage is done to troopers by turrets or Guardians, and less damage is taken from players and troopers to the Guardians. Their range to be considered for souls has been reduced 5 meters. Well, that's also been reverted, so that's further away. And troopers now do 20% more damage to each other, so they do less damage to each other as a whole. I have no idea the reasoning behind that. Frankly, I think that Guardians need a buff. I think they need to do more damage to people, especially to punish level 1 to 5 kind of first 5-10 minutes tower dives. I think you should be able to kind of defend yourself with the Guardian, but I struggle always to sit under a Guardian and win someone that dives me, which I think is very odd. I think they need to do more damage, but maybe we'll see that kind of buff in the future. There's a plethora of changes to physical shop items as well. I'm not going to cover any of these because they're all kind of, you know, this has been reduced from 1 second to 2 seconds, or damage from this item has been reduced from 15 to 12.5%. The changes are to multiple items in all categories. That's weapon, vitality, and spirit. None of them are dramatic. If you want to check them out, the link is in the description. Finally, the last thing we're going to cover is all of the patches, nerfs, buffs that have happened to heroes. So the list of heroes that have had changes are Abrams, Bebop, Dynamo, Grey Talon, Haze, Infernus, Ivy, Kelvin, Lady Geist, Lash, McGuinness, Mirage, Mo and Krill, Paradox, Pocket, Seven, Shiv, Vindicta, Viscus, Warden, Wraith, and Yamato, which feels like a whole lot. Now, all of these changes, maybe apart from a few that I will cover in a minute, are all kind of, as I've said before, where this has been reduced. I mean, Abrams' bullet damage decreased from 4.68 to 4.5, so it's a change of 0.18, which we're not going to cover. We will, however, cover the major ones, starting with Grey Talon. So Grey Talon's charged shot can now shoot the center of the Spirit Snare to trigger it and detonate it immediately, which is pretty cool. Adds a little kind of skill element to it. I'll be interested if we see that get used very often, though. Grey Talon's charged shot can now secure orbs, as well as Lady Geist's Malice can now secure orbs. This still isn't valid with Bebop's ult, which I find really weird. Hopefully that gets a patch in the future. Kelvin's Frost Grenade now also reduces stamina regeneration during the slow duration, so if you get hit with that, your stamina is going to recover slower. Lady Geist has somehow had a crazy buff, I think it seems like from what I'm reading anyway, where Life Drain Tier 3 now grants charges, and at any given time when you have extra charges, you can cast multiple life drains on different targets. So she could drain from multiple people. I don't know what that stacks up to, but that'll be interesting to see. And also somehow Seven's Stormcloud now has a buff, as if it even needed one. When Seven uses Stormcloud, he's now granted a secondary ability, which is a Lightning Strike. So it's a one-time use AoE ability, and you can target anywhere in your range, and after 2 seconds, it will slam a vertical lightning strike, knocking enemies away from that radius and dealing 150 damage with 1.5 spirit scaling. Doesn't sound too difficult to avoid. Didn't need a buff. We'll see how it goes. And finally, the hugest patch on the hero side of things is for Haze. So Haze's Sleep Dagger is no longer a Sleep Dagger. It's like a slow dagger. So it won't put you to sleep and stop you from doing anything, but it will make you move at 2 meters per second, and you cannot use any stamina, you can't mantle anything, nor can you parry, but you will still wake up on damage taken. So I love that personally. I main B-bot, so when I hook her, I can still shoot her, and I won't just go to sleep immediately. So that's really interesting. And I felt like the sleep dagger was a bit annoying, so we'll see how that plays out and see if it gets changed in the future. Overall, I think this patch is quite good. I think it's got a lot of changes in it. Nothing is too significant, but I think we're going to see a better game out of it. I think the balancing is finally getting there when the next patch comes in. I'll see you then. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for tuning in. If you did enjoy, please do like, comment, subscribe, share. Do whatever you do. If you are eating a pineapple, I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you soon.